Hello everybody, this is David Panush from the Edmund Burke School. This is a video lecture for Chapter 8 from The Moral Animal by Robert Wright. This chapter is about friends. This slideshow is very spare, so mostly it's going to be me lecturing as efficiently as I can be. First, so this chapter really is about how friendship evolved. Last chapter we talked about how kin selection explains why people are nice to other people to whom they are likely related to. This chapter explains why would we be altruistic or cooperative with people that we're not related to. There is this concept, major important idea called reciprocal altruism, and essentially the idea is, we reciprocate. So if one organism is nice to me, then I'm nice to them back. There are biologists named Williams in 1966 said an individual who maximizes his friendships and minimizes his antagonisms will have an evolutionary advantage. So thinking of it in any social species or any species where working together, living together with other members of the species, if you can have friends who help you and enemies and not have enemies who want to hurt you, you do have an evolutionary advantage, and we should expect the emotions that support those behaviors to evolve within that species. So the emotions that support reciprocal altruism, these behavior, right, are feelings of loyalty, feelings of friendship, feelings of liking people, disliking people, feelings about morals. We'll talk about how this is kind of at the root of morals. The feelings you get around morals when people don't do what they're supposed to do morally, or do what they're supposed to do morally. Gratitude, right? Sympathy, trust, suspicion, guilt, dishonesty, hypocrisy. So all those things are going to come in to this whole game, because once we start playing it in terms of reciprocal altruism, there's both benefits and there's costs, and we have to be aware of them. In terms of cognitive processes, right, our brain needs to be able to process certain things in order for this to work. We need to be able to make judgments about the value of the good that somebody is doing for you in order to pay them back equitably, right? So we need to have sort of a moral framework in our heads. What is right? What is wrong? We need to have an idea of justice. We have to have an idea of fairness. What's fair? We have to learn self-control to be able to work with others. We have to learn patience, because we may not get paid back right away. We have to learn sort of a numerical, basic numeracy, the idea of understanding values. We talked about that. Memory. I have to be able to remember what somebody did for me in order to do it, help them out later, or take revenge on them later. And the same thing with facial recognition. If I don't know who did the favor for me, I can't do the favor back. I need to know who my friends and enemies are. So I need to be able to not even just facially recognize. In other species it could be smell, but I need to be able to distinguish between the various organisms, other members of my species I'm interacting with. Wright in the book explains how this evolved, and he talks about this idea of game theory. Game theory is a study of decision making using a model where the benefits and the costs are manipulated to the players. And so the players play the game. There's a certain structure to the benefits and the costs. And we can use this decision making model to simulate what it would have been like for our ancestors or any species to sort of play these types of games. They're models, but they're real in the same sense too, because anytime you interact with another organism and you have to decide, do I cooperate or do I compete? Right? And each one has costs and benefits associated with it in different kinds of situations. The prisoner's dilemma is probably the most famous game. And in the prisoner's dilemma, two prisoners are in jail. They can't talk to each other. They may or may not have committed a crime. And the investigators are sort of trying to get them to rat each other out. And they offer each one a deal. They say, if you rat out your pal, you'll have a shorter term, but he'll get a longer term. And on the other hand, if they both rat each other out, they're actually both going to get the longer terms. But if they both cooperate and don't rat each other out, they're both going to get longer terms than they would get if they ratted the other guy out, but not as long as they would get if they both ratted each other out. So the incentive then in every situation is to rat the other guy out. And that creates a situation, in this case, where there's only one choice, and the choice is not to cooperate. But if you flip the incentives, instead of calling it the prisoner's dilemma, maybe call it, the prisoner's delight, you could just flip the incentives and make it obvious that the right thing to do always is to cooperate. Because if you can cooperate, for the two of you, you're going to have a better outcome. Each of you individually may not have a better outcome, but together you will have a better outcome. And that is where you get the idea of non-zero sumness. So any situation in which if we can cooperate, we'll both be better off, then that's a non-zero sum interaction. Instead of winner takes all, loser takes none, it's we both take some and we're better off in the long run than we would have been if we had a zero-sum exchange, right? Where like I get it all and you get nothing. Or maybe we compete so much, neither of us gets anything. We both lose. So the iterated piece is, so we're playing a prisoner's dilemma or a game like the prisoner's dilemma. If I play it once, my incentive is to cheat, to not cooperate, because I'm going to get the biggest payoff and the other guy's going to get the worst payoff, right? I'm going to get out more easily or more quickly or all together. He's going to have to go to jail. I win. But if I play it again and again and again, well, now I've got to worry about what he's going to do next time. Is he going to, if I screw him this time, he'll remember, right? We talked about that, and he might screw me next time. So the incentive then becomes, even though I may get more payoff if we only did it once from cheating him, if I think about the next time, it's probably better for me to cooperate because he's probably going to cooperate with me next time. And so we can work our way into a cooperative relationship if we do it again and again and again. And this is exactly what friends do. They build a relationship. It's long-term. It's over and over. Their interactions are always, not always, but mostly positive, and they both are better off from them. So in the book, he talks about one of the things that is inherently non-zero sum, especially in an ancestral environment, is information. I don't lose anything by giving it to you. If I tell you where a good water source is, or I tell you how to hunt, then we go hunt together. We both are better off in the long run, or we can exchange that information. That creates friendship. Gossip, remember from the first part of what we learned about this book, male and female relationships are important for us to know about. We need to know who's faithful, who's chaste, who's promiscuous, who's a cad, who's a dad, who's going to be, a good person for us to pair up with. And so gossip feeds our thirst for that type of information. And again, it can be exchanged, and we both might benefit because now we both know something, good or bad about somebody else, that then we can make better choices because of it. So one of the questions, even with this theory, was, could this have evolved in species or organisms that couldn't communicate, couldn't actually say, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And so this guy named Axelrod created a computer simulation that basically had different strategies in the game, playing the game of an iterated over and over again prisoner's dilemma. And these different strategies would compete. And then after a certain amount of time, the strategies that were most successful would reproduce and become more common in the population of strategies. And what they found over time is that one strategy, very simple strategy, evolved by reproducing the most and being the most successful until it was an evolutionarily stable strategy. It took over until all of the organisms in the simulation essentially had the same strategy. And the strategy was cooperate in the first time you interact, and then copy your partner's last move in the next round. So if I cooperate and you cooperate, great. If I cooperate and you cheat me, next round, I'm going to cheat you back. Okay, so it's a tit for tat. I take my revenge. But then if you go back to cooperating, I copy your last move and I cooperate again. So it's also a forgiving strategy. It's not going to hold a grudge, tit for tat. Okay, so this creates friends and enemies in a sense. Tit for tat will not cooperate with another strategy that continually not cooperates with it. So you sort of get shut out and ostracized. So friends, if you think about the emotions, you're gonna have affection for them, you're gonna trust them, you're gonna cooperate with them. Enemies, you're gonna feel hostility towards them, you're not gonna trust them, and then you're not gonna cooperate. So this idea of tit for tat shows in the simulation shows how reciprocal altruism can evolve. The other piece that's important, remember that emotions drive behaviors, and many of the emotions that lead to reciprocal altruism are the same emotions that kin selection started us off with. So if you think kin selection comes first, because we know from a genetic standpoint, if you're nice to people who have your genes are going to benefit. But now you have these feelings of love and affection, trust, and cooperation. With kin, you can see how if you start to use those same emotions to drive behaviors with non-kin, it could pay off if you get into a non-zero sum situation. All right, so, whoops, wrong thing. So lastly, let's talk about some of the moral aspects of reciprocal altruism. In terms of reciprocal altruism, it's important to know how much should we give? How grateful should we be? Okay, it doesn't work if it's not generally reciprocal. So they have various examples in the book. They got vampire bats, they have chimpanzees, and they're showing how these species kind of keep track. I don't know if they're feeling sympathy or gratitude, but they're doing it. So one bat shares blood with another bat. Another day, another bat will share blood, but only with the bats that have shared blood with him in the past. And similarly, you see the same thing with chimps. So with us, we turn it into morals. It becomes a social norm, which is the same thing as a moral, right? It's an expectation, a societal value that you would be nice to people, that you would cooperate with people. It's hard to think of a moral system that doesn't foster reciprocal altruism. If you think of the golden rule, essentially in various formulations, it's reciprocal altruism. The flip side of that is we feel guilty if we don't follow morals, right? And if somebody, and angry at other people who don't follow them, especially if we are following them. So the person with the most to lose in a moral system is the person who's following it. If I'm always cooperating and people are continually cheating me, then I'm losing. And so then I want to enforce the rules. I say, you guys have to cooperate because I'm cooperating. Well, I'll be better off. But if everybody's constantly cheating or not cooperating, it's bad for society. So those who like normally to cooperate will be morally indignant, which means it's an anger and indignation at those who don't follow the moral code. I guess I glossed over this a little bit, but the reciprocal altruism needs to be relatively even. So a good example is, remember the variables benefits to receiver, cost to giver. So if I give food to you and you're starving, I should expect more back in return from you later, even if I give the same amount of food to you on a day that you're not starving, if that makes sense, because you'd have more gratitude for me in that time, but also I might have more sympathy for you when you are in need. Moral indignation, remember, so I'm skipping around, sorry. Moral indignation is almost always public. And the reason why it's public is because we talk about other people's morals, other people's behaviors to damage their reputation. Because we want to make them pay for not cooperating. And so what we want to say to them is not only, hey everybody, not only did this guy cheat me, he's going to cheat you too. So that's where the public nature of moral indignation comes from. It's why reputation becomes a huge factor in the way that we treat each other. If you treat each other well and can earn a good reputation, people are going to be more likely to cooperate with you. Again, and if you don't, then people might be less likely to cooperate. You could even be ostracized, which is the worst thing in the ancestral environment. So publicize the sins of others, but obscure your own sins. That's sort of what you're going to do, or publicize your own good deeds, but maybe play down some other people's good deeds so that you have a good reputation. Remember, if we go all the way back to the beginning, the reputation thing, you want to maximize your friendships and minimize your antagonisms. That's what your reputation can do for you, and that's why it's so important. All right, I've run out of time, and hopefully I've covered everything I need to cover in a way that will help you understand it. Maybe not. Enjoy, and if you have questions, come and see me, and I'll see you soon.